Okay, so Linda Burman-Hall, known to many of us because of her years of work as the artistic director of the Santa Cruz Baroque Festival. So Linda, I guess, are you a native Californian?
Well, yes, I was born in Los Angeles.
Okay, because I see that you got your BA degree in music at UCLA, and then she went to the East Coast to Princeton and got a Master of Fine Arts at Princeton in music and also a PhD in music at Princeton. And then she did some postdoctoral studies, really going a long ways from California at the University of Amsterdam at the Institute of Ethnomusicology. So Linda does a lot. So she's a composer, she's a performer, she's probably best known for the harpsichord. She has been the longtime director of the Baroque Festival, but she also has this very large ethnomusicology part to her scholarly work. So in her musical interest, it's just wide ranging from the Baroque to contemporary to Indonesian. She's really done a lot over the years with gamelan. And I didn't know this about Linda until she gave a talk to the Emerita, but she has this long, really anthropological interest in Indonesia. And that's going to be the subject of her talk today, which I will allow her to present. So hard to categorize what academic area this talk is in today. But let me just give one little plug for Linda. So a lot of you should have received here the 2022 season for the Santa Cruz Baroque Festival. And it outlines everything that's happening, including some performances in which Linda will be playing. And there's also a kind of wonderful event in which you can go to Linda's home and have the music in the garden is one of the events sponsored by this. So take a look online. I'm sure you can find the Santa Cruz Baroque Festival. So with that, Linda, it's all yours.
Okay, I'm going to share screen and let's hope this comes out the way I intend.
Okay, it's looking good. Okay, that looks good. It's full screen.
Okay, and so all well, let's go back to my first. All right, so good morning again, and I'll be talking with you about Mentawai Gibbons, Cosmology and Shamanic Song in Siberut. So I've made 9 research trips to the Mentawai Archipelago since 2011, about 100 miles west of Sumatra in the Indian Ocean. During these trips, I visited all of the 4 main islands. Starting out, I'd like to thank Dr. Thomas Geisman, my friend and colleague at the University of Zurich, Irchel, Department of Anthropology. He's the director of the Zurich Irchel Department of Anthropology, director of the Gibbon Research Lab, the Gibbon Network, and president of the Gibbon Conservation Alliance. The peaceful sunset photo with the title of my talk is how I like to think of the harbors of Mentawai between the tsunamis that sometimes have catastrophically affected life on the islands. Before we go deeply into my topic, let's look at where we are on planet Earth. When I speak of the Mentawai Archipelago being west of Sumatra, way out in the Indian Ocean. And so here we are with the map of insular Southeast Asia that pertains to this. Let's orient Malaysia and Singapore and the islands of Indonesia that are closest to Mentawai, Sumatra in the center, and Java with Jakarta at the northern tip. You just see it at the bottom of the map. On this map, you can see the Mentawai Archipelago as the 4 small green barrier islands on the left side, below Nias and west of Padang. Getting up closer, you can see Mentawai north and south Pagai, and in the middle Sipora, the government center for the islands. In the north, the big island of Siberut, as large as the other 3 islands put together. Since it's clearly marked in red here, Siberut National Park is almost half of the island, 47%, or the entire central west of the island, 735 square miles, that reserve, or 470,400 acres. For comparison, that's 63%, almost 2/3 the size of Yosemite Park. Some of you might have heard about Mentawai from your children or grandchildren, because the seas and surf breaks of Mentawai offer some of the best surfing on the planet, second only to Hawaii. Now, when you follow that little foam trail in the center of that gargantuan wave, do you see the human being on a surfboard at the very bottom?
No.
Yeah, like an ant. That is a big wave.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
God.
Oh, you don't catch me out there. You catch me on the dry land of Mentawai. Travel to Padang on Sumatra is, of course, by jet. So far, so good. After that, travel is by motorboats, going once or twice a week to each island. Once you're there, either you go on by jet boat to glamorous surfing resorts, clinging to rocks and taking all their food in by boat, the same kind of boat, rocket boat, and their water by barrel, or you take the native pom-pom dugouts to visit small villages of the Mentawaians. Settlements are far upriver to avoid the surfable waves. You can see why. My first travels to fieldwork bases were in narrow watercraft like this, holding 4 or 5 people with provisions and a small motor. That is a wide native tree that has been dug out. Various species of trees living together cooperate mutually and have evolved together. So also the animals that have come to live in the forest. They have evolved according to what can fit and survive best in a particular forest and a climate. So when I went to Mentawai, I was going to see the rainforest. When we came off the boat, this was the curious children coming to greet us. And here is the rainforest with trees up to 120 feet, quite common, and emergent trees sticking up once in a while from the rest of the pack up to 150 feet. Like our giant redwood forests here. Mentawai is quite famous for its endemic wildlife, especially for its 7 endemic primates. The most famous of these is the endemic gibbon, locally called bilou, and the 6 endemic monkeys. That word I've been using, endemic, means found here and nowhere else. Let me clarify here at the outset that a gibbon is an ape, a tailless primate. Humans are a very special case of great ape. We're part of the hominid group. Gorillas and orangutans, chimpanzees and bonobos are the other great apes, meaning their size and strength is great. They are our closest non-extinct primate relatives. Gibbons are apes, simply smaller sized, from the size of a 6-pound house cat, like the Mentawai gibbons, up to about 30 pounds. The lesser apes. There are 19 species of gibbons, all native to Southeast Asia, and where Southeast Asia touches South or East Asia. The arms of gibbons are much, much longer than their legs, and they use them to leap around the treetops by what's called brachiating, swinging consecutively on one arm and then the other, leaping between handholds. It's common for all gibbons to leap up to 30 or 35 feet on each consecutive arm swing of a brachiation. Often gibbons vocalize as they engage in these athletic displays in the treetops. They are rock star gymnasts. Let's look at the two Mentawai gibbons in treetops, photographed by the Mentawai member of the Swara Ova Gibbon Project, working in Java, where they're endangered gibbons, and in Mentawai. So these are short clips. And just like every time I try to film brachiation, jumping 35 feet out of the field of your telephoto. It's the way it always goes. So there we are.
Oh. Right.
Like the human genome, the great apes have now been sequenced. Also, many of the gibbons. In terms of genetic proximity, chimps and bonobos share 98.8% of our human DNA. Orangutans share 97%. All gibbons, also gorillas, share an impressive 96%. The Mentawai people recognize and cherish their close relationship with the Mentawai gibbon. In the virgin rainforest of Mentawai, which is rare to find outside the Siberut National Park, the primary daytime aural impression is the cries of primates and birds. Of the primates, the bilou has the capacity to be the very loudest. Whenever it might be startled, it can be heard miles away. Because of its deafening alarm call that's heard far and wide, the bilou has earned the role of protector of the rainforest animals. And if it notices any hunting by animals or humans, its loud cry will ruin hunting for up to an entire day. This has led to its reputation as a powerful, wise, and caring guardian of animals. Even humans consider the bilou sounds an alarm to protect them. During my field trips to Mentawai, I discovered that the Mentawai gibbon, known as the Kloss's gibbon, which has the scientific name Hylobates klossii, and which I'm going to call in this presentation mainly by the local Mentawai name of bilou, is the most powerful force that shapes Mentawaian cosmology and spirituality, as well as the legends and folk tales of the Mentawai people. The unique core beliefs Mentawaians hold about the bilou are revealed in songs in an antique language passed through many generations of shamans. My fieldwork reveals that these beliefs about the bilou are held throughout the archipelago. Before we go on to discuss the bilou, I want you to imagine you're in Mentawai, asleep peacefully at 4 a.m. This is what you're hearing.
We can faintly hear the birds, Linda.
Yes. Nowadays, a rooster or two.
We were supposed to hear him, we didn't.
So we'll come back and talk a little bit about that call. That's the male gibbon singing for the sun to rise, imploring or compelling the sun to rise, as the way the Mentawaians see it. Back in the old days, before so much of the primal forest was cut, you might have heard not just one, as we did now, but as many as 6 male gibbons chorusing in a casually overlapped cacophony in the canopy over the longhouse where the Mentawai clan would be living, each Mentawai clan. It's a sign that all is well in the forest when the male gibbon will start up before dawn. It's been called the finest music uttered by a wild land mammal. I believe it. Well, except maybe for the female bilou. And now I want to talk about the degree of significant spiritual power that traditional Mentawaians assign to the endemic bilou. I already said that the cry being so loud that all of the rainforest animals are protected by just one animal, the bilou, becoming alarmed, and that humans think it's for their protection too, even though they've only been there for about 2,000 years. But let's compare the only other culture that compared a primate to a special spiritual role. That's ancient China, certainly not modern China. So the degree of significant spiritual power was happening in ancient China. Ancient China's gibbon culture is a world that exists now only in the memory of scholars. It ran strong from at least 3,000 years ago to around 400 years ago. The old Chinese beliefs about gibbons held strong through the 6th century Common Era, our Middle Ages, but then very gradually waned and fully disappeared as the heavily forested heartland of China along the Yangtze and the Yellow Rivers became progressively deforested to allow for agriculture and then more agriculture. By 400 years ago, everything was gone. When most of China was still deforested, the wealthy and well-educated studied for examinations and then became civil servants appointed by the emperor to run the nation's day-to-day affairs. They were called literati. Many of us plant hummingbird and butterfly gardens or know somebody who does, but the literati far exceeded us in their commitment to lure wildlife to live in their gardens. In truth, these wealthy style setters lived generation after generation on their enormous semi-wild, semi-tended garden estates in the company of free-range gibbons, and they enticed wild gibbons to feel at home. So the gibbons would sleep and sing in their magnificent multi-acred fruited gardens and be unafraid as servants and family members walked the paths and filled the fruit bowls with special treats. Like today's Mentawaians, the ancient Chinese craved to be in the companies of families of wild gibbons. And now look at a gibbon family at play. Father, mother, and the baby, still a blondie. The earliest writing about a gibbon is the report at the turn of the 6th century before Common Era, when the beloved pet gibbon of Prince Chuang of Chu, also known to history as Chung Wang, king of the Zhou dynasty, went missing on the Yangtze River Valley. Gibbon gone. Where could it be? He ordered an entire forest to be torn up and decimated in the frantic but ultimately unsuccessful attempt to find his pet again. Well, the first record of deforestation, I guess. The fact that this rash and impulsive young man, in fact, lived no longer than 22 years, suggested that maybe he found the life without his dear pet gibbon was simply not worth living at all. The ancient Chinese in pre-Common Era times also imagined a mysterious, hidden, supernatural world beyond human experience in the tree canopy high, high above. This special world, secret world, was the realm of gibbons. Gibbons were privileged to preview and be ready for the weather headed toward mortals living down below on the earth. Because of their natural grace as singers and brachiators, long-armed, long-bodied gibbons were styled by philosophers as the perfectly modeled and perfectly proportioned creature. Gibbons were believed to be able to effortlessly inhale the qi, the universal power, as earthbound humans long to be able to do. And so were considered by the ancient Taoists to instinctively know the secret to longevity. In fact, some masters even believed gibbons lived for centuries or were immortal. Taoists kept gibbons as well as equally thin and graceful cranes, that giant bird, the crane, as their special pets. For both their looks and their grace, both cranes and gibbons were considered perfect masters of the qi. The famed Dutch Orientalist diplomat Robert van Gulik, who lived from 1910 to 1967, recounts that to the old Chinese, a gibbon was the perfect role model, comparing gibbons very favorably with the barbarian-like troublesome macaque monkeys found all over China. So can you imagine the extinct Chinese parents lecturing their extinct Chinese teenagers like this? Check it out. Gibbons are by nature shy, gentle, kind, and modest. They are faithful to their mates. They take care of their families. They share food and don't squabble among themselves. Oh, they pick only what they need to eat. They don't waste food. Unlike monkeys, they never steal food from farmers. Monkeys, on the other hand, oh, they argue constantly. They throw fruit away after only a single bite. Monkeys are loud and immodest. They ruin the harvest. Be noble, be like a gibbon. So I can just see it around the dinner table. In Chinese poetry of the 4th through the 8th century, the calls of the now extinct gibbons that once sang along the Yangtze River gorges and beyond were considered heartbreakingly sad and were said to inspire human weeping. Thousands upon thousands of poems were written, mainly by travelers away from home. But we can no longer see the gibbons of these poems. I will share just one by Xiao Tong, an early 6th century crown prince of Liang. He wrote, "Hearing the gibbons call inch by inch, my entrails are torn. Listening to the cranes pair by pair, my tears flow down." And now something from the Ming Dynasty in the Smithsonian, a very beautiful painting. Unknown artist in the 15th century copying a 11th century style. Gibbons were still being painted by travelers and local artists. In the Ming Dynasty, gradually, as more of the forest became farmland after the 17th century in China, finally, the several various gibbon species celebrated in the old poems and paintings went extinct and thus are completely unknown to primatology due to total habitat loss. And now we'll look at the bilou in Mentawai cosmology, how it is the core of Mentawai belief. As profound as the fondness of old China for old gibbons was, Mentawai Islanders have taken their attachment to the endemic Mentawai gibbon, the bilou, even further. For Mentawaians, who for at least 2,000 years have depended on that pre-dawn song of the male bilou, their sleeping trees to implore or even compel the sun to rise, there is one additional meaning given to this characteristic male morning call. If this call is ever heard at a strange or unusual time of day or night, a time that's not 4 a.m. or so, then it means that the calling male bilou is under the spell of the great bilou spirit, called the Sanitu bilou, a forest spirit, and is therefore busy attending a death in the clan. The song of the male bilou, when delivered at an unexpected time, helps to reassure a human spirit that is understandably frightened because his or her body is in the process of dying. It also reassures everyone in the communal clan house that the Sanitu bilou is helping with that painful and disorienting transition. Imagine that the bilou now is calling at lunchtime. We can listen and think as the Mentawaians are doing. Since it's Sunday, almost noon, it's not simply the male bilou asking the sun to rise. It's a forest spirit, the Sanitu bilou, using its magical power through an ordinary male gibbon to communicate an impending death in the clan by voicing long and sad sounds at odd intervals and times. This means the spirit, called Ketchat, of someone in the village is being called home to Beu Lagai, the Mentawai name for big village with all the human spirits. The fact that the voice of the gibbon spirit reliably guides the Ketchat home means that the gibbon spirit can be trusted in this vital duty. Unlike the traditional morning chorusing to ask the sun to rise to escort a human spirit at an unusual time, just one male bilou will sing. Mentawaians traditionally believe that gibbons were created from humans. The story is that long ago, a young boy became terribly upset when his favorite ceremonial knife was accidentally broken. He ran away and climbed a very tall tree. He threw his climbing rope down to the ground and hid high in the leaf canopy. When his family came to look for him and call his name, day after day, he wouldn't answer. He was high in the treetops, eating wild figs and jumping from tree to tree. In fact, he became the first bilou. Since bilou understand all about the forest, flowers and fruit and leaves and bark and roots as well, and vines, the first bilou eventually became the first shaman, or cries, an herbal medicine healer. He taught people to respect the forest and that the punishment for disrespect would be illness. But the ceremonies and herbal medicine could put things right again, teach people to respect the forest. To this day, Mentawaian shamans go to trance to indirectly consult the bilou spirit to heal a sick villager. Indirectly, because they use a go-between, another spirit that is their personal helper, who can ask the bilou spirit what a sick person did to be punished by their illness. Since then, they depend on the help of the bilou to find cures for sick members of their greater clan. The shaman, the cries, will never hunt or eat the bilou. So now we will look at some bilou in decorative and ritual art. For hundreds of years, Mentawaians have decorated their communal clan longhouse with decorative and ritual art carvings and abstractions based on their most significant, important, and vital animal, the bilou. Here is an abstract chain of guardian gibbons that you might find up by the eaves, the top of the wall next to the roof. This is an early to mid 20th century example, and it's like a daisy chain of gibbons holding arms. You see their bodies, their legs and arms, and their heads are presumed to be down, and therefore, let's say, foreshortened. And unlike most islands, Mentawai didn't have metal craft introduced, and they also didn't have the backstrap loom, so they don't know the art of weaving. So this is a bark cloth panel, like they make fine bark cloth. And again, we have the bilous in a repeated decorative model, a protective thing for whoever's going to use the bark cloth with bilou motif. And now something very interesting, a tulangan bilou. This was purchased by Stanford University, presumed to be a very old and very valuable piece of which nothing was like it, surviving from some hundreds of years ago. Well, you know, even if you radio date something of the wood, if it comes from a very old tree at the core, it will date out quite old. And that's in fact what the carvers know. So this was made from a core of a very ancient tree, but it was made quite recently. And so it was coming to light, at first very embarrassing for the Stanford curators who had taken it as something that was hundreds and hundreds of years old and miraculously preserved. So this is a bilou, and you see how much longer than the legs the arms actually are. It's from Sagalube village, the new artist, Apak Kray, meaning he's a shaman. He made this, and he is now completely rehabilitated in the reputation, not being a forger of old things. He's come forward as a radical visionary artist, making a new kind of artifact for the Mentawai people. This is a cutting edge new statue of an important artifact for the Mentawai people, a bilou. And so it's been called a masterwork of contemporary art by the leading anthropologist of Mentawai. So Stanford can hold their head up again and put it at the front of their visual collection, just to change the label a little bit. So there we are. And now something that Reimar, the leading anthropologist, has found, Reimar Schaefold of University of Leiden, found this stylized carved wood panel of a squatting gibbon, arms up toward heaven, legs down toward earth, and the body symbolizing where humans are. Squatting gibbon, this survived the forced Christianization in the mid-50s of the Mentawai Archipelago by being thrown up into a dusty attic and being made invisible by the layers of dust, I guess. It's a complex ritual to make a longhouse for 100 or so members of one of the clans to live by themselves together in a valley. And once that's done, to consecrate the house, you must have a jaraik, something like this. This is a jaraik fetish. And to consecrate this, they will have praying and fasting of the whole village. And then certain hunters who are good at it will go in search of a male macaque monkey. Remember what the Chinese said about the macaque, how naughty and difficult it was. Anyway, the macaque will be what you really have to be aware of because of how rude they are. But why would anyone want a macaque skull? It's actually because the male macaque is so fierce to guard his clan, so fierce to guard his children, his monkey children. So they want to have the spirit of the male macaque working for their human clan. And so while they would never hunt or kill a bilou, they do want that male macaque skull at the center of their gibbon fetish panel. So they think it was made in the 1930s, and they have consecrated the house with it, and it actually was hung over the communal altar of the Sakude clan in West Siberut as a guardian and blessing panel. All the women and children of the clan slept under it. Nothing more sacred could have been imagined than that bilou protector, which by protecting the women and children was protecting the future of the clan. And now it's in the Dallas Museum, and it can be seen there as one of their most important pieces of art. This jaraik has proved that the bilou guardian of the daytime jungle is also the guardian of the clan itself. And now I have given you the slide now for a few minutes for the Mentawai ecotourism. And this proves that the bilou, their cute little logo, is like the panda for China, becoming what's known off the island internationally as the logo identifying Mentawai and Mentawai things. And now we can turn to how shamanic song about the bilou is representing, manifesting Mentawai cosmology. In Mentawai, shamans are called kray or sikray. Shamanic songs have their text in an old kray language that is not intelligible to ordinary people. The archaic embellished texts and their meanings encode Mentawai traditional values. Every kray has a guiding spirit who possesses and guards the shaman when he goes into trance to learn things for the sake of his clan. Most often, the trance is about to learn what the person who is sick would have done to disturb or offend the forest. The shamanic language texts are taught to kray candidates preparatory to the time they will be considered fully initiated to shamanism. The song texts and melodies, as well as the chants and rituals, will vary according to the lineage of the teaching shamans. Here I am with the first shamans I was able to meet as a group. I was in 3 days in by one of those tiny dugout canoes. This one had a little motor, not just paddles. 3 days in, as far as we could travel, with a medical team from the University of Indonesia, providing medical services over a multi-day trip to this little village, Rogdok. And the shamans are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, maybe one in the 70s. But the apprentice here is in his mid to late 20s. And there's also someone else who's not a shaman, who's in their 40s, who is studying shamanic song. In 2019, I recorded this gentleman, Aser Sakaletuk, a kray in Tiop Desekatre in southeastern Siberut. He sang the Uliad Bilou, an important shamanic dance song, which we can hear. I want to tell you that this is about the bilou, and it tells what the bilou does during his day with imitation of the gibbon cry at the end of each line. Not an imitation like we heard, but an acceptable shamanic imitation. The bilou looks for a place to stay, climbs a tree, gets chased by hunters, plays with his baby, goes to a high feeding place, and then the spoken last line after the song ends says, "It's all true."
No sound.
Looking for the arrow.
Tôi tôi á kì cô ai Nai cao tôi nam lo bilo bilo de ke ai
Here we are. Okay, and now we are at my favorite shaman, and this is Aman Boroyogo. And we are in very senior shaman. Now he's a widower, born in about 1949. He owns a couple of different homes on South Siberut. I've recorded and interviewed him quite a few times, and we are, let's say it, probably good friends. You see him here in both his houses, and on the left, you see a carved bas-relief, which he did with his own hands, behind where he sits to talk with his friends in one of his houses, and singing and holding a leaf, a sacred symbol in Mentawai religion, Sabulungan. And here's another shot taken following an interview with him on his veranda, relaxing. And he sang an amazing song for me after all the songs he sang about Mentawai primates, and many of them about the bilou. He agreed to sing about the Sanitu bilou. And I wanted to say about this, first of all, that you see the enormous sea turtle shells that he decorates his house with. They're an endangered species, but no one would stop this caray when he decides to go out fishing with nets to try to get what his ancestors have done for hundreds and hundreds of years. The text will say, young gibbon of the wilderness, he grieves, calling souls and calling those and calming those who are worried so they don't go astray. He talks about purification before the next world, the big village. Bathe in pure water. This is addressing the soul. With the lines, Would that you would be my boy. Would that you would be my girl. I read this as the Sanitu Bilo, this forest spirit of the Bilo, is offering to comfort the spirit, leaving the body as though it were a young Bilo. It could hug and cuddle like a Bilo family member. That seems to be the way you could read it. Without the help of Bilo song to lead the spirit, leaving the body to the big village, the spirit, the human spirit, according to traditional Mentawai belief, might get lost in the forest, never find its family or its correct place in the world beyond. As a wandering ghost, the worst thing might happen. It might haunt the living. So this is why you need kare and why you need the bilo to sing your spirit to the right place. Make sure it finds the big village where you need to go. So let's listen. Sorry, let's see if he will sing again for us. One of the side effects of screen sharing is I can't see what my cursor is doing, so it can do mischief. Nope. Here it is.
Yangalo yende ji ai hue Oi doi ma tia vai hue ne Yeah. Yeah, it does. But jangan lupa kita. Dari sini dia bilang kita itu.
Okay, so he forgot that he had any more verses, so I turned the camera off when he seemed to be done with the song, but he suddenly remembered he had one more verse, so I had to turn it on very quickly because he began to sing again. And then at the end, he wanted to show me that he had a protective tattoo of a bilou. Here it is on the right, on his bicep. And now we see that other people, because Mentawaians are tattooed as an early form of ID card, with what they consider to be their identities. This is a monkey hunter, and you see the tails on all the primates on this guy's chest. He's probably successful bringing down lots of jungle meat for his family. None of them are the bilou because of the taboos, but you see that he's very proud of this ability. So that's what he has gone for, his badge of honor. So it's time to work toward our summary now. Ultimately, the purpose of my field work has been to preserve the intangible culture that survives, the old stories, the songs, the dances, the art for future generations of Mentawaians, while translating them and making them intelligible and available to all. So much damage was done to the traditional culture by the mass purges of shamanism in the mid-1950s, and subsequently by the overreach of the Indonesian government and the proselytizing churches under the erroneous notion that the indigenous beliefs and traditional life ways of the Mentawai people were not appropriate to a developing nation. But now, with tourism and tourism dollars as a goal, Indonesia has been forced to reevaluate, to see that the traditional Mentawai life and its intangible culture, its traditional communal house with carvings, paintings, and decorations, such as the sacred Jaraik fetish, its songs and dances, all of these are of great interest to the outside world and are something to be proud of and to retain as symbols of identity. Given that every tree that's harvested removes vital habitat, the critically endangered Mentawai primates are the most fragile and vulnerable. When the forest is no more, the bilou, whose past and current role is unique in Mentawai, will no longer be able to guard current and future generations. When the bilou spirit can no longer help the shaman heal the sick, when its song can no longer escort human spirits to the big village when they are dying, something unique and precious will have been lost in Mentawai that at this moment still anchors many traditional believers to the natural world. And here we are with the Mentawai virgin forest. Consider modern China. Doesn't have much of this anymore. Light years beyond the old dynasties that revered gibbons until 4 centuries ago. Now, certainly China has lost any remnants of its true gibbon culture, as only a handful of critically endangered gibbon species struggle to exist. 2 gibbon species that made it to the 21st century have recently gone extinct in China, and the total number of extant individual gibbons is now much less than the number of wild pandas. Everywhere that gibbons live, the stress factors are forest fragmentation, illegal hunting, and human disturbance. If China wants the trend to extinction, can be reversed, like they did with the panda, but it will take a tremendous and sustained effort. Returning to my overall topic on cosmology, gibbons, and shamanism in Mentawai, I can summarize. Only in Mentawai do we find the beliefs of a current animist culture interwoven profoundly with the endemic gibbon in this way. The isolation of both the bilou and the Mentawai population has created a unique aspect of local cosmology, a symbolic cultural relationship between humans and gibbons that now exists nowhere else. It's unprecedented for any culture to associate the cry of any primate with predicting death and dying, and with guiding a human spirit safely to the right place in the afterlife. By calling anomalously timed male gibbon song bouts the work of a spirit guide, Mentawai culture is truly unique. Like China, if deforestation is not reversed, Mentawai will perhaps eventually find itself without its symbolic gibbon, and humanity will be the poorer for it. While time remains, we who care must protect Mentawai's forests, must protect the endemic primates and the amazing traditional culture uniquely associated with them. A list of the roles of the bilou in Mentawai may be in the chat window to remind you of some of the places where we've been today. And I offer you my last slide here, how to help the gibbons, if you're so inclined. Please take a look. If you're so inclined, you can join a Facebook group, and you can also go online and find the Gibbon Conservation Project and consider to make a donation anytime. So thank you, and I think I can stop screen sharing.
Okay. Excellent, Linda. So questions for Linda. Okay, and I did put up the information into the chat, Linda.
Good, thank you.
Rusty has a question.
Yeah, Linda, how do you communicate with the people there? I mean, what language?
Well, I studied Indonesian at UC Santa Cruz back when we were teaching it, and that was 76 and 77 with Tunggul Siagian, who is the head of a large Christian school system now. He was called back after a few years as lecturer. We kept the program going at UC Santa Cruz Merrill College for a few years. We used to have the Third World Resource Center centered at Merrill, and the field center there with Nick Royal, and a lot of people went to Indonesia getting involved. A lot of people went to volunteers in Asia from Merrill College. I studied Indonesian, and it took me actually 2 years of being a member of that class to get 1 year's coursework done, because I was a full-time lecturer with a nominal 8-course load, which amounted to a lot of committees and actually 6 taught courses. Quite difficult. And so I communicate with my Mentawai translator, who knows the enough of the 6 languages of Siberut and languages on the other islands to be able to make himself understood. So no, I don't speak Mentawaian except a few words, but I speak the national language.
Barbara, and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm wondering, what is the population of Mentawai at this point? How many people are there?
Well, there's, I don't know the population of all of the islands, but I think the Siberut might be about 200,000, the Great Northern Island. A lot of Mentawaians live also in Sumatra. They've gone out to the Padang and north of Padang area to work in construction.
But some of those people must be working in these lodges and kind of modernized, and others are still living in a traditional way. Is that true?
Well, that is true. The government required in the 50s that they began to move into government housing and out of their long communal houses. And so they moved them, unfortunately, into the reach of these tsunamis. They moved them down to the coast because it was more convenient for them to be served by government people coming in on boats and offloading on skiffs to the shore. And that turned out to be the undoing. Every time there has been a tsunami, the native people will deforest a lot of trees themselves and spontaneously abandon those housings, if any of them are left after the tsunami, move into where they used to live, the center of the island uphill, and use those trees to build new houses.
Okay, other question, Ron.
Hi, Linda. I was just wondering, in your studies out there, did you have any contact with Baruti Galdikas by any chance, an anthropologist from?
Oh, no, she's working on the primates in Sumatra. And I've not been to those camps where she rehabilitates. Birute is a very famous person, and I know some people who have worked with her, but there are no large apes in Mentawai and never have been.
Thank you.
Susan, did you have a?
Yeah, this is kind of extraneous, but I noticed that the shaman was smoking and holding on to a lighter, typical of many of the Asian peoples. Has that been a real problem, the health of these people that are relatively recent to development?
Well, he and some of the other shamans sing very well in their 70s and 80s. Some of the shamans I've recorded, and they all smoke like chimneys, have started to have problems in their 80s with their lung capacity, and you can expect that. What I find that the government of Indonesia has done is to say that you cannot have a job in government if you're a smoker. And I've met people who manage to go on nicotine patches in their government offices all day. And then they come home and they have a totally different identity and even a different name as an artist, perhaps. And they smoke with maybe cigarette holder and so on, very, very dashing as an artist, but they smoke and they have a job with government, but they somehow have it hush hush. They're not supposed to know about the second wife, the second house, and the second identity, which includes smoking.
Another
But
quick
the idea is that you
question.
can't get that pension from the government if you're a smoker.
Quick question additionally. I notice he has a distinct vibrato in his throat. Has that been studied physiologically, how they get those sounds with that vibration within? It sounded like it was deep in his throat. Did everybody else hear that like I did? That kind of a vibration is what it sounded like. A very deep bass kind of thing. Am I the only one?
I thought it was a vibrato of some sort he was affecting.
Yes, he's been taught that that is the proper way for a shaman to sing. And even the young students, when you do find young students, which is up in Siberut, will be singing that way.
So that's a part of the tradition then.
It's a tradition of how a live voice should manifest itself out from the depths of your being as a shaman.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, other questions? Well, I had a question related to that. They all look very fit. And so, you know, they've not succumbed to the modern world's putting on some weight. So are they still out hunting? Do they live outdoors? Are they really active still?
Definitely, they're very active. Let me say that I see that they do ride motorcycles, but at many times of year, the motorcycle roads are too rough and muddy and underwater for passage. And so they're getting anywhere they can get by foot. And what I see is that even 85 and 90-year-old shamans are going on small boats, small canoes, and even sometimes self-paddling to get to the other islands, which is very difficult. And they go out fishing and they do catch for their family or their clan. What is very important about the shamans is they're not in it for anything other than taking care of people. The shaman that I went to interview once, I found was out for 2 weeks. And so I saw him at the end of 2 weeks. And when I asked him where he'd been through my interpreter, he explained that he'd been down to the next island, teaching a family how to take care of one of their elders. And what he had done was to show them all the paths and all the mountain tops that the various herbs that could be prepared to address this person's malady could be found. He showed them maybe 6 or 7 places for each of the different ingredients for his herbal concoctions that he wanted them to know how to make. And so he wanted all the members of the family to come along with him while he scouted to find where that grew within 4 or 5, 6 miles in all directions of their places, and where to find those plants and bark and roots and whatever, so that everybody knew and nobody would lose that knowledge going forward. And then he could come back. He would not need to go down to that island and make that trip to treat that patient. The family would be treating that patient for that chronic disease going forward. And I think that's quite amazing. And what they paid him with was probably a couple of chickens and maybe some rice cakes wrapped in banana leaves to go back. So not such a great monetary gain by any means.
Okay, any other questions for Linda? Barbara?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what is the typical lifespan, and also what is their typical diet? You've mentioned a number of things, herbs and all those things, but I'm curious to know what the diet consists of.
Well, the diet is sago, which is a carbohydrate. Sago is a kind of cycad, and fished from the local waters, crayfish, fish from the local rivers. For feasts, they like to eat the pigs that they have raised in pens under their houses. They eat the bananas, and they intercrop. They're horticulturists that intercrop fruit trees on the rainforest. So durian and bananas and pineapples. are big in season. A few people have avocados, but those are quite scarce. They eat chickens from time to time, but those are used for rituals. So it's not very often that they get to eat meat. The ones that have converted to Islam cannot eat pork, and so they will substitute beef for the rituals. And that's a very small percentage of the people, but still it is a substitution.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Linda, and thank you all for participating. We're going to take December off. I hope to see you all in January when we'll go back to what we can learn from Hamlet to apply to modern day life. All right. Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas,
Thank
Yeah.
happy
you.
holidays.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
Happy Hanukkah and Diwali. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Well, thank you so much.
All good.
Hi. Barry, did you hear about what happened at the beginning with some of us?